Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. Thanks everyone for coming back after lunch. That's really good of you. I'm not sure I wanted to come back. No, just kidding. Just to refresh everyone's memory, I'll just tell you everyone's name and where they're from again. So to my left is Lara from Cinesite, Helen also from Cinesite, Ollie is from RiseFX, Rob is from Framestore, and Graham is from DNEG. So hopefully you saw their presentations, which I thought were fantastic on Infinity War before. And because they just did 3 hours of chatting before lunch, I was wondering if anyone had any burning questions that you wanted to ask them then, but now you've come back to ask them now. Has anyone got any questions that they saved up for this session about things that were done in the presentations? Yes. I think we're going to get microphones sent around. Awesome.
I can ask the same question I asked Lara and sorry, Ellen. It's about when you have to the production comes back with other reshoots, etc., and you have to do it at the very end. I mean, at the deadline, it's very short, and everything. How do you manage to first of all to make them understand that this is a really incredible job you have to do in a very short time, and then afterwards, do you have any debriefings or briefings just to call? I mean to explain to the supervisors and everything that I mean there are some stuff you cannot do because it's the end of the deadline.
Great question. I'm just going to tell the crew that they need to pull out the microphones that are sitting next to them, and they're just going to share them whenever. Who's going to tackle that question first? Lara.
Well, maybe I'll jump in terms of, because production, the producers are the first ones to have that conversation with the clients. So the clients will come and talk to us about the additional work scope or any changes that they want within a sequence. So the first thing we'll assess is definitely how much time we have to achieve that. And then we'll make it very clear, okay, what can we achieve and what won't we be able to do. So in our situation, we had a whole sequence that came in with 4 weeks left. So we sat down internally and kind of discussed with the supervisors, okay, what are the elements that we think are the most important and what are other things that we'll try to just minimize. And we went back to the client, discussed it, and agreed on a happy medium. So we were very lucky, like in one of our sequences, it's quite a dark environment, so that's something that we used in our to our advantage, where we're like, hey, things are going to be quite dark, certain details you wouldn't see, which I think if we had more time, definitely would have been more detail and more refined. So there's kind of a give and take. It's like that discussion with the client, yeah, we'll try to achieve it, but you're not going to get the best results.
Yeah, I mean, they're very aware of compromises and what the effects of things will be with short deadlines. It's not that they're naive. They know what the things that you have to cut. The main thing for me as a comp supervisor is to make sure that whenever I'm in a session and I hear a new thing come up that I know myself is going to take a long time and be quite tricky, it's to kind of let that go and be on the production side and let them tackle it and have a conversation before having a reaction to it, and especially to make sure that I don't then go back to my team and relay any kind of feeling of panic or energy from that. You want them to focus on what they're doing and be creative and happy at all times. So it's kind of like to come back and say, oh my God, we've got that. That's not going to get anywhere. So you've just got to come back and say there's this insane idea or whatever, and it's really hilarious, and we're going to try, but don't worry about it because Lara's going to have a chat, and it goes like that because these things are going to happen, and there's no point in reacting to it like that.
I think. Sorry. I think someone will always do the work. So if it's your sequence and your sequence is being reshot, the desire is to do the work. So, and the end of most production schedules are pretty manic anyway. I mean, we have had some shows where it became really difficult. But then what happens then is in someone like Framestore, they will just pull resources of other shows to do it, basically. Because the client eventually has to make their film, and you are going to do whatever you can to try and make it happen. And you're invested in it too. You want the film to be good, so it will generally.
Yeah, I'd say more of the same really. There's a bit of a hunger, and certainly part of you might be filled with dread when you see that new work, but part of you is like, I want to do it. So there's always that fight between like, the challenge as well. But we handle it in a really similar way. Like we had a trailer shot where they changed an effect on the last day and said, "Oh, can you make a shield?" Wanda had to make a shield, and it was the last day for the trailer. And we didn't panic. We were just oh, it's really funny. They want to make this thing up out of scratch. And then we looked at it and broke down the problem and work out what we could do in the time. And it wasn't necessarily like that fear of dread. I mean, that's the thing that Dan and Jenna have been in the industry long enough that they are really open to you saying, we had work that we couldn't do and we turned away. But as you say, that was picked up by Rise and other vendors because there would be somebody who could do it. So you have to bear that in mind. And like Rob was saying, is if you've invested the time in the sequence, you have ownership over it, and you want to finish the work that you have said you'll do.
Cool, great. Anyone else got a question? Grab the mic for you.
Thank you. Okay, this is coming from maybe an artist perspective, and we're talking about crunch time. You're going to hire up a lot of people. And how do you think in the near or mid-range future the whole decentralization of remote workers might come into bigger play than it is now? Maybe to get around the hustle of just having all these artists moving to the location and finding a place. Talking from some experience here.
So did you say relocated artists? Decentralized. So working in other parts of the world, you mean? Yeah.
Not now, maybe in the future. I don't know. Is there an idea of this going, or?
I think things probably are likely to go that way as time goes by. It's kind of happening in all companies now. In crunch times, at the moment, I think a lot of preparatory work is actually decentralized at the moment. So then it's probably not quite so crucial. I think it would be difficult to run things very remotely if you are like staying till 4 o'clock in the morning trying to get shows delivered. But with organisation, I think that could happen.
But one of the issues, Rob, isn't it, is security, especially on a big Marvel film. I know that, at least in Australia, they don't let anyone work remotely from home on a Marvel film because there's actually a whole process for the MPAA or whatever it is to say, no, you can't do that because you need to work in a bricks and mortar building. Do you guys find that with the work you do as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about this with both us and Cinesite. We're not even allowed internet at work. Like we have email systems, but if we want to get a picture off the internet, we have to like log into a separate computer somewhere else. So it's not like we couldn't just upload something to YouTube. It would be quite a mission for us to get it out the building even. And there's so many protocols. So an artist, even a concept artist, probably wouldn't be able to be working on the film outside of the building. But DNEG's like a global company, and we worked a lot with our team in India. So we were working remotely, and I've done work in the past with Vancouver and teams spread across the world. So it's possible, and like Rob says, I think as the work sort of changes, you can totally see that you could have little outpost facilities all over the world. The technology is going there, and the workflow is going there as well. So the way that we would have worked maybe 2 years ago everybody would have been in the same floor within meters away from each other, but now there's much more of a complex communication process where you will be talking over Skype or phone call or internet message type thing, like internal internet message, as opposed to just going and sitting next to somebody's desk. So that will probably lead the way. The fact that people will be remotely working anyway all over the world will mean that people are more open to that as a solution.
Yeah, I mean, the confidentiality thing isn't a new thing for Marvel. It's on any show we've ever worked on. We have that in our contract. So all studios are quite strict about the information and what you've seen and what you're working on, obviously. But the whole remote thing, I think, yes, to other countries and remote locations, it can be set up. But I think some guy working at home, probably it's a little bit of a way off yet for something like that in terms of just not the logistics of it, but just kind of the mentality to take that on board and plan for it. I mean, technology can do it. It's just more a case of, especially at crunch time, I don't think it would be something that you'd want to throw in the mix.
Yeah, I think like despite from security reasons, especially on a Marvel project, you have to be certified to be able to work on it. So you have to have security audits and all that kind of stuff to prove that your system is secure. Like this must be one reason, and the other thing really is like in the industry, work needs to be given to an area. Most of the cases where you have like tax refunds and all that stuff, so you're not as free to give the work anywhere you want, actually. That's maybe the other side of things.
Cool. Yep, another question? Just with the microphone. Sorry.
I was just wondering, in these years that you've been working, have you ever seen any changes, big changes in the industry as far as VFX are concerned? For instance, more work, more problems, or I don't know. Talk about it, if you can talk about it.
I think more VFX shots, as in
or
the
maybe
number
more
of shots.
problems on some, or maybe yeah, like you
There's
said.
no problems in visual effects, are there?
No, the speed of turning things around has definitely increased in the time I've been working in VFX. It was a much slower process. I think as technology gets faster, people's expectations get faster from our end and the client. Everybody thinks everything can be achieved quickly because technology can do it quickly. You can render faster, you can work on faster machines, but people haven't sped up particularly. They're still creative processes, and the problems of something abstract still has to be thought out. So that side of it is exactly the same. It's human nature, but technology's made everything go faster. So sometimes that can be a little bit of a clash. Yeah.
I'll say quickly something about, I think there's just so much more of it, and the clients always want it to be cheaper. I think that's always the thing. And more competition, I'd say. Some companies come and go, but generally speaking, the competition is just much harder, and we're all underbidding each other, which is, I think, a big, big challenge. Yeah.
I'd say the excuse me, the problems have completely changed, but the core problems are exactly the same. So 20 years ago, someone reliably told me that we would never be able to render hair because it's completely impossible. It's just too complex. Now, I guess new challenges are met by using AI and stuff like that, which we wouldn't have conceived of doing like 20 years ago. So you still can't do it in time. It's the big problem. The schedules are too short. They were too short then. They're too short now. It's the same. It's always the same cry that you hear from everyone. We can't do this in the time, but it hasn't really changed.
It's actually a really good question because we were actually talking about this last night between us, which is maybe 20 years ago, digital visual effects studios were smaller and therefore you had smaller teams. Now, I mean, I'll let the guys tell you how big their studios have become, but now they're corporations, and so they have to act like corporations with structures and departments. I mean, Graham, for example, how big is DNEG now?
I don't even know. It's
I think
it's into the thousands.
2,000 people, right?
It's more.
And
it's
it
more.
started with 15 or less.
Yeah, it started, I think, 12 people, and now there's like 1,000 in London, 1,000 in India, probably going to ramp up to 1,000 in Canada over the next few years. Plus, LA is just huge.
So simply managing people is the harder bit of visual effects in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's processes that you start taking for granted when you're working on smaller teams. So when I first started at DNEG, it was still quite big. It was like 200 people. And I started in like roto prep, so painting out markers on like a hand was my first shot. But I knew the producer on the film. I could go and speak to them. I'd speak to the line producer. The VFX supervisor was in the office. Whereas now that same producer is the VFX producer on Wonder Woman. A roto prep artist doing the similar work would be in Chennai in India. They won't be able to approach that person in the corridor, and to get that information from somebody in LA to somebody in London to somebody in another team, maybe in Mumbai and then Chennai, is just a huge like chain of links with language barriers as well. So French speaking in Montreal, we will time differences as well. So we will have to just work out when we're going to have our reviews through the day, so we maximize the time zones. So we'll go, okay, if we send a note now, then they'll be able to pick the note up in the morning, and then by the time we get in, we'll get a version. So we're like maximizing on like throughput by like utilizing time zones. But it's obviously like massive challenges because you can't, I was saying it, we were talking to Oliver about it, I can't even go into somebody's script and see what they're doing or even talk to them. I might see like three layers along, and there might be something that I can see there's a problem, but I can't find that tangible problem easily. You have to kind of trust a lot more people, and communicate what you want without being able to grab your hands on the machine yourself and actually look at. We have dailies, absolutely, but the dailies are over different countries. So they'll have a dailies in India, then they will say, okay, we're going to present this, send this over to London, and then we'll have our dailies in London. But the artists might not be in the room. It's the difference.
Yeah, no, that's great. Awesome. Any other questions? Just here.
Thank you. Your work is amazing. The movie was awesome. How do you feel seeing your name at the credits and be part of these adventures that begin with Iron Man in 2008?
Well, a name can be quite difficult to find sometimes. As long as you're willing to stay right until the very end, people are giving you funny looks. It's good. No, it's great. It's really good. I think it's a really good film, and it's really good to have been involved with it for such a long period of time. You know, it's cool.
What do your kids think about it?
Oh well, they're Marvel fans, so they love it. In fact, I get a lot of information from them about what the Marvel universe is about. So it's actually really useful. I can go to clients and I can talk with authority on Planet Hulk. But it's all, I've never read it. It's all been given to me by my son.
Go ahead, Helen. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. I think it's like, yeah, sure, it's rewarding to see your name on the screen, but what I love more about, like, instead of seeing my name somewhere, is like to be sure that maybe stuff that I created myself has been seen by millions of people, and I think that for me is the reward. I mean, you keep just collecting IMDb entries and whatever, but I mean, in the end, it's not that, for me, actually what counts. I mean, it's having a great time and doing cool work and stay healthy throughout it, actually.
Yeah, that's a bonus. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is undeniably nice to see your name. I think even now I still sort of go, I don't really care, and then it's like, oh, there it is. It's kind of nice. But I do think it's really lovely if I can never kind of get any of the roto guys or anybody who's done maybe something that was quite laborious and time-consuming and maybe not quite so glamorous to get a few of those names up there, because you can't get these shots done actually without them. But also I think, as Ollie said, there's other things about it that you might be like on going on a bus to work or something, and then you kind of overhear someone saying that they've seen the movie, and you kind of think, oh, I'm on my way to work to kind of fix some Waldos today. That's weird, you know. And it's quite a unique job. So there's the downside, and there's tons of work, and there's, you know, it's tiring sometimes, and all of that. But you do get those random moments where you just see people maybe commuting to work in a shop or something, and you think, oh, yeah, I'm pretty lucky. That's some funny moments like that.
Cool. Any other questions? Right here.
Hello. My name is Jack. I'm designing products and I'm using a 3D computer software. Sometimes when I walk in the street, I see a car and I'm like, okay, oh, they use this tool here and this one here. And, oh, they use the new tool here. And so 3D computers, softwares, they allow you to explore new directions. And it seems like for you, when you don't have the tool, like sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't have the tool, but you have some guys who kind of do tricks for you. And so my question is, what kind of tools do you miss today, and like how do you see what do you think that you will be able to do like in 1 to 2 years time?
Good question. What tools do you currently use, and what, like, maybe off-the-shelf tools, but also your own tools, and what do you think you'll be able to do with them in a couple of years' time?
Okay, well, what tools do we use? We do mainly use off-the-shelf tools like, for instance, Maya or Houdini or Nuke or Photoshop or whatever, but they had been customized in a way that we can work with them more efficiently. Like, that's actually what it's called, the pipeline. What's an ongoing development every time, and if you're lucky, you can pull from every project. You can pull something out that you can just integrate and use on the next project to be faster, or more efficient, or to create something that wasn't that you wasn't able to create before. Yeah, but I think the next years, what's going to bring, like, maybe you're going to do more work faster probably, and I think what's like really the next iteration of tools is like maybe the AI kind of thing that has been mentioned already. I think that will be a huge breakthrough for the industry to just do work that is like really labor intensive, a lot faster, and yeah, a lot. Yeah, it's probably faster, and you don't need so much manpower to do it like manually.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. That's I think the next Thanos was so successful on Infinity War, and if you read the papers on the machine learning stuff that was done on that, then it's an inspiring new avenue of CG. So a lot in performance capture. I think that's where you probably see a lot of companies trying that. I know Framestore already thinking about this because, like Ollie says, it's the potential. It's not just the potential for mass producing a lot of work, which is obviously of interest. It's like as expectations grow, you need your technology to keep up with it. That is the kind of rule. But also that you might get different things out of it, better quality stuff. I don't think we'll ever replace animators, but it's bringing a new dimension to it, maybe a new way of doing animation. That's right. In 2 years' time, if that's the question, and definitely, I think that's what people will be trying to do.
Cool. Anyone else want to weigh in? Any more questions? I can't believe no one has asked what happens in Infinity War 2. Yeah, because you can totally tell us, right? Oh. No. Anyone got any other questions? Just up here.
Yeah. Hi. Just how many hours you work a day? Because at a short time you need to deliver it. So it's the night white or white night.
Good question. I want you to be really honest with your answers. Come on. Start with you, Graham.
Well, this was actually quite a smooth show for me, but the last year was really nice. We kind of came in at 9 and left at 6, and then I went away on Christmas break and came back, and it was just absolute chaos and just so busy. And it's probably like 9 till 10 p.m. And the last few months was like 7 days a week at the end of the project for us. And yeah, that's probably where we were. But I've been on worse projects, so.
Yeah, I agree with that. I work normally I work 9 till 6, roughly. But when shows are delivering, it's actually not so much the lateness. I probably wouldn't leave later than midnight. It is more the consecutive days that you work. So those 2 days of the weekend, they become no longer yours. I do know people who have worked through 2 consecutive nights, and I would say it's probably not. It's not the way to do it, because by the end of that, they're completely burned out and not really useful anymore. Even the humane side of it to one side, they can't actually do the work, so you have to go home.
We definitely do a 9 till 6, and I think that's our regular day. And then obviously when there's trailer deliveries, that's coming, so that's your ramp-up time. And then a show like this, it's the same as Graham was saying. After Christmas we came back, and that's when we knew it was going to get heavy, because we hadn't had the stuff come through earlier. So we kind of prepare yourself as much as you can. Obviously everybody has a life, everybody wants to go home, your friends don't go away, your life carries on. But it's not a surprise, so it's not like you kind of don't know it's coming. And we're very good at Cinesite. They're very aware of people's lives. We've got a lot of family people with children. They're kind of known for being like very, very aware of it. So I think it's a case of the artists having a good relationship with their supervisors, and the supervisors having a good relationship with their producers, because although you may not be able to control the client as an artist and you work for a company, that doesn't mean you don't have a voice. And I think if you have to keep healthy, and I don't think it is healthy to be overtired, and I don't think it produces good work. So you have to be aware of your team, and if you can see someone is clearly not finding it, because some people actually enjoy it, they want to do a lot of hours and they're really into it, and other people are struggling, and you need to be conscious that you're watching them and finding whether they're enjoying it and finding it a challenge and they're going to go on holiday soon, or whether they're dreading every day and they're actually very tired, and not to let that happen. So it's it's a concern we have to be aware of.
Ollie?
Yeah, actually I work from 10 to 7 most of the time, but I think it really depends on what kind of position you've in. For me, when I started supervising, my hours did grow actually. As an artist, I try to have like all my artists on the team to have their regular working hours. But depending on the project, when it's in the final crunch, sometimes you can't avoid to like work weekends or like working some long hours to get some renders done or some comps finished or something like that. But I think it's like up to the company to give them something in return, like 3 days or whatever, and that's pretty yeah. I think you need to do this. Otherwise, it's not going to last long, actually.
Yeah.
Lara?
Yeah, so I think working in production, I take the whole overtime and overworking my team quite at heart, because you can kind of see it as a failure on your behalf to not have kind of prepped accordingly if you see your team just overwork. So, I mean, usually there is, I mean, technically speaking, there is a formula. You know what kind of work you have to do, and you know how many people you need to achieve that work. And on certain straightforward shows, I mean, you're going to have the 9 to 6 lifestyle because you can crew accordingly. The client's not going to change anything, and it's a very smooth ride. Like Helen and I actually worked on a film once, well, it was Mute, which was a Netflix production. That was really straightforward, such a lovely experience. But then you're sometimes faced with shows that are much more complex, and you can't, when there's a change of brief, you can't just suddenly the next day hire an extra 60 people. And so that's really the challenge, that then unfortunately there is this necessity to kind of work a double shift. And then, as you say, it's, as a producer, is really giving incentives to the team and ensuring long holidays after the show, et cetera, and also keeping the material also interesting. As you say, artists are actually willing to stay because they want to work on those shots to have it on their show reel. So,
Awesome.
Oh. I was wondering, you were talking about developing tools. I was just wondering, back then I was working on, when I started in Los Angeles, I worked with Matador. I was just wondering about Roto, if there was some development on Roto and Digital Paint, or it's still crude man work.
Just in case anyone doesn't know, roto means rotoscoping, which is
exactly.
basically tracing around parts of the frame to enable different things to happen.
When I started, there was Matador, which was really great. Now I don't know the new tools.
Our prep team, our Roto team, work in Silhouette for some of their work, and Roto in Nuke for a majority of their work. So depending on the type of shot, what the Roto was needed, they would decide to go into Silhouette, and whether they knew that software or not. But that's an old software, and they're still around, and they all use it. But Nuke allows them to do a lot of projection of Roto, so they would do still frame Roto and project on the geometry. There's lots of other ways of doing the Roto through Nuke now. So it's the way you would be used to, and then use Nuke. Yeah.
Got a question just up there.
Good afternoon. Did you study for what you're doing now and then went kind of in a straight line to where you are? Or were you doing something slightly different and kind of stumbled into what you're doing now?
That's an awesome question, because I was going to ask that one of the panel as well. Maybe we can go down the line and talk about your path into visual effects. Lara?
So I always wanted to work in film, so I studied film, but history. I don't come from the technical background. So for me, it's something, the technical aspect of it is something I learned in the industry. And visual effects, I definitely fell into it by chance, and that was just based on the people I got to meet once I graduated from university.
Yeah, I originally I graduated in photography and ended up working as a runner for a production company with the intention of being a cameraman. And after a few months of being a runner, I started doing a bit of camera loading, clapper loading, and it was such a physical job. It's quite an intense job. So I was quite young at the time, and I thought, nah, maybe not. Maybe this isn't for me. So I kind of went back to college, and I ended up working when I was a runner. I ended up working with a director on set, and he took me to a lot of the post-production sessions. So I was his assistant, but I would sit in on the sessions with him. And I'd never heard at school, I'd never heard of Henry and Harry and these flame suites. I mean, it was all for TV and film. And I kind of went, oh, you know, piqued my interest. So I went back to college to do graphic design with moving image, but I actually studied on the Quantel system. It was at Ravensbourne and they had a Quantel kit, so I was very lucky. So I used that kit. So I had a bit of software, hardware knowledge, plus the creative stuff. And I got a bursary with Quantel afterwards, doing demos and training on the Quantel kit, the Domino kit, which is just one guy sitting with the... and then from there, I just ended up at Shepperton Studios, and it moved on to Illusion and on to Shake and then on to Nuke. So the software changes and it will always change. I don't think there is one route to do where the job I do. I think it's there's a technological sort of, if you're into computers and into Python scripting and all of that, that's one kind of interest. If you're into painting and photography, there's interest. It's all the subjects combined, but I don't think there's one sure route. I just think being interested, meeting people and having a go really is the thing.
Ollie?
Yeah, so originally I didn't want to work with computers at all. It was like, I mean, I was always interested in like drawing, painting, this kind of things. But really working on a computer all day long wasn't originally my plan. I do like to game though, and obviously then I owned a computer, and at some point I think my older brother introduced me to Maya, and yeah, from there not initially, but I got hooked, and from there I was just searching for schools where you could just learn that stuff, and it was pretty hard to find one actually. But what I learned from all that past experience and from all the interns or junior artists that are starting is like you need to teach it to yourself. There's like no school is going to prepare you what you're going to need to work in a actual production, and you need to have that drive to really dig into that, and really you need to love what you do actually. Otherwise, you won't survive in the industry. It's my thing. Yeah. So after doing like this animation course that I've done, I worked at a small company, and then from there got to Rise, and since then stayed there. So
Cool. Rob?
I did fine art as a degree, and after that I did an MA in computer animation. But there was about 5 or 6 years in between those, because at the time, this is back in, I don't know, 1996 or something like that. I didn't even know what computer animation was. So, but I kind of found out in that intervening period, and then when I left in I don't know, in '97, something like that, it was there were very few jobs in CG. All pretty much you could get jobs in games. And you could get jobs in London. You could get jobs in commercials, and if you wanted a job working in commercials, you probably have maybe 2 or 3 at a maximum CG artists working in a commercials company. But then the Mill opened Mill Film, and they were hiring 15 people. And I just thought that was the biggest number of people I'd ever heard. And I thought, I'm guaranteed to get a job there. I did. So.
You go on. Great.
So, like Lara, I studied like film, a little bit of filmmaking, but mostly like film history at university. But I'd always been, when I left, I'd always been like interested in animation and done like stop motion films and things like that. But I was pursuing a career as an editor, and I sort of managed to get a job which I'd sort of made a short film using After Effects, and that got me a job like painting out logos for a Discovery Channel series where it was like poker and they couldn't show the logo, and they'd shot all of these like hours and hours of footage. So I got really good at painting things out, and I was doing that, and then actually I went into like documentary filmmaking for a short time. So like fairly only like 8 months or so, but I was working as an editor on like a science series, on corporate videos, and like short horror films and whatever. And then again, similar to Rob's story, I had never seen anyone advertise a roto position. I was like, I saw a post for like roto. I was like, I'd always like harbored like an interest in animation and visual effects. So yeah, even though I was kind of pursuing like off kind of slightly doing this other career, I was like, I think I'll give that a go. So I started at DNEG as roto, and I've stayed ever since.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more question. Is that about right, Sam? Yep. All right, at the front here. Better be a good one.
I don't know. Hello. I would like to know how much ping pong you have to do with film in production, and how much your work is influencing as well the way the film is being shot. You know, like the production shooting is getting longer, and some of the effects can, you know, be prepared pre-production, but also, you know, you can create something and then send it back, and they can reshoot something. And how much you think you see this changing also the way films are being made with special effects?
It's definitely, I mean, Marvel, this film is a good example of that. The cloak example was a great one in that would have never happened probably 10 years ago, because they wouldn't have had the option. So people responding to a screening, and then being able to react, do some kind of reshoot, or do fully CG sequences, that's kind of more and more happening, where they will work until much later, shooting much later, and adding things, and a much more sort of free-flowing process. And you know, I think there's a lot more. There's starting to be a bit more of a desire to incorporate visual effects early on in the procedure. So you saw with like the vignettes that Rob's team did, that they did use that on set and show people, and influenced how things were shot, and definitely previs is a massive influence on how films are shot.
But Marvel in particular definitely chops and changes their own films right up until the end, and you guys have all experienced that.
I'd say that when you think about it, if you're making a big visual effects film, and you've shot most of it on green screens, it's pretty hard early on to know what the film is like. So, and I think if studios realise that you need to, well, they always have got their films in front of test audiences early, and if you want a test audience who's kind of naive to visual effects to understand the story, then the effects have to be good, and I think that's why I've certainly seen in the last few years a pressure to produce quite high quality work much earlier than we normally would have done. So that ping-ponging process, I think the idea is that you reduce it, because you know earlier on what your film is like, and you can kind of stick with that. But the converse of that is that you can realise earlier on that your film isn't very good, and that now you need to reshoot it. But in a way, that's better that it happens earlier than right at the end of a show, and they may even have to delay the release of a film because things haven't worked out.
Maybe just finally on that, I'm always curious. I hear about visual effects artists working on a sequence for 6 months of their lives, maybe longer, and then the sequence gets cut. I just wonder, how does that feel? I mean, apart from the obvious disappointment, do you have nightmares about it? Do you think about it?
I always expect it. That's the best way. Is it that your work can get cut? Yeah. And I think the first time it ever happened to me, I was very upset. But it happens so frequently. You just can't. You can't become too attached to the work. Right. That's the truth of it.
Yeah. No, I worked on a sequence for 6 months. It was Proof of Life, and the entire sequence was omitted as we finalled it. So that was joy. So you have to get enjoyment out of the process, not just seeing it at the movies. You have to get enjoyment out of the creative process that you're doing. Having said that, it's not a nice feeling when you're really committed and you put a lot of time in to not see it to fruition. But going in, it's going to happen. It happens more and more, as you're saying, this ping-pong thing, especially with heavy effects films, because part of effects films, it's not like traditional filming with just actors and no effects, where you film it, you know the story, and you edit. The whole nature of effects is you need to see it earlier, so there's going to be some editing all the way through. So you have to kind of prepare your team and just be ready for it.
And sometimes you get a little inkling from the client that it's not that story might not make it through the final cut.
Yeah.
So you kind of go, hey guys, let's just work on it, but
take the foot off a little.
Take a foot off.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for asking so many great questions. It made my job really easy. And again, thank you for coming back after lunch. So please thank all these guys.